Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the FitFam podcast. This is Hilary, Miss Olympia.
And this is Doug, the Formulator.
And we're excited to talk to you today about a subject that we speak to our doctors, our clients about, as far as like really getting down to the basics of what's most important when you're trying to reach optimal health, right?
Optimal health or performance, really. This is a good follow-up from last week's episode, I think, right?
Absolutely.
Because it was all about, the specific nutrients needed for optimal health versus performance health. This is good.
I like that. So it's a good point. And really, it comes down to that if you focus on this subject for the health reasons, you're going to get the performance out of it.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of a cool way to go about it.
There you go.
Well, we start a lot of our seminars with the doctors with this question. So we'll start this way with the podcast. And that is, do you know what the largest attributable risk factor is for disease? In other words, out of all the things you can test and check and everything, what's the one thing that really gives you the most data, that's most important factor when you're looking at your risks?
It's a good question.
And the answer is blood pressure. Blood pressure. So blood pressure is the number one risk factor that we can check. It's easy. Mm-hmm. You can check it.
Yeah, it's non-invasive.
Right? Non-invasive, which is a good thing. Don't get poked and prodded.
We have some other, get your blood work gone.
And so you can go to Walgreens, CVS, all these places to do it. Highly recommend you actually have a blood pressure cuff at home. We have one.
Yep, absolutely.
And I recommend everyone have one, and just to check it, because if it's a number one factor that lets you know your risk of disease, and probably the thing that's going to pop up the soonest before something major happens, you really should keep an eye on it. Right?
True. And it's easy to do, so why not?
Why not? And so systemic hypertension, we talk about blood pressure, hypertension, same thing. Okay, so systemic throughout the whole body, hypertension, it remains the largest attributable risk factor of mortality worldwide. So this isn't just a thing in America, right? And the problem is, according to the study that came out, that the problem's increasing, that the amount of adults with hypertension or high blood pressure increased to 1 in 3.
So what do you think that is attributable to? Do you think it's lifestyle related? Do you think it's, just nowadays we're under more stress? What do you think?
Yeah, good question. I think it is lifestyle related. I really do. I know that there's always an argument that we're under more stress now than ever before. Well, I think we have more noise now than ever before, right, in the world.
True.
But in all reality, it's the same stressors: family, finances, everything else. And the key really is lifestyle. And I think that if you look at what's changed the most in the last 3 decades, and we talk about it a lot, there's this huge change that's happened in the last 15 years, and that is toward processed foods.
Yeah, I actually thought that's where you were going to go. So.
And it is, right?
Yeah.
Like even growing up, we had a lot more whole foods in the diet.
For sure. And I think even when you live a healthy lifestyle, you're still guilty of it, right? We're guilty of it. Yeah. Grabbing, if we're in a hurry and we're at a convenience store, mind you, we'll try to grab baked chips over, fried chips, but we're still grabbing something processed from, every once in a while. And so, I think we're all guilty of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's really the key, is to look at the lifestyle. And we're going to talk about that, like what specific lifestyle factors can help you to keep your blood pressure under check. And that's really going to be a thing. So let's talk first about high blood pressure, no big deal. But there's a lot of conditions that are caused from high blood pressure.
Okay, so let's give a few. So heart disease, diabetes, stroke, cancer, even something as simple as headaches.
Right. And so a lot of people don't look at headaches as a condition, like a warning sign. You can look at it either way, but basically it's saying your body's saying, hey, something's up, too much pressure.
Yeah. Cramps, low energy, excess weight gain, slow recovery from injury or exercise, and poor physical and sexual performance.
And each one of those are so unique because, from the headaches, the cramps, people don't think low energy because you have poor circulation, right? Because of the high blood pressure. Heart disease being the number one killer in the world today, and it's number one. So that's why this is such an important factor, is it leads to heart disease. And it's something to really watch. Main reason that you and I are going to lose quality of life and die early. But the last one is interesting, and we'll get into that too, which is poor physical and sexual performance. Now, physical performance, sexual performance, I think it's going to be mind-blowing a little bit later in the podcast. We're going to talk about how some of the sexual drugs that are out there today all stem from this subject we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. All right.
It is cool.
So let's get to the fix, right? So we know blood pressure is huge and everyone should test it.
Right.
You went over the conditions.
Yep.
Right. So we've got to fix this problem.
Right. What we're looking for is increased circulation without increased blood pressure, right?
Boom.
Okay.
And that's so critical because right now we could go jump up and down, do jumping jacks, and we're going to increase circulation.
Right.
But we also might be increasing blood pressure, and that would be a problem. So we want to increase the circulation without blood pressure. And then you have the best of both worlds, because when you increase circulation, you're increasing the amount of chances that the tissues and the cells get to get nutrients. Right? Because you've got more movement of those nutrients and the oxygen through the body. So there's a better chance it's going to get to where it needs to be, so that you have more better thinking, clear thoughts, right? Cognitive function, performance, and all aspects. So circulation is critical, but without the blood pressure.
Got it.
Good. So what happens when the blood pressure comes up? We named all the diseases, but let's talk about it for a second. It's basically just excess pressure, and somewhere, wherever there's a weak link, you're going to blow, right? So if you put pressure in a hose, wherever it blows, that's that weak link in that hose. Same thing in the body. That weak link might be a valve in the heart, right? And you have blood vessel in the brain, we have aneurysm, a stroke. That might be an organ. It might be just through circulation somewhere in the body. There's a lot of things, or liver, kidneys, all kinds of places. So we really want to understand that we're just increasing pressure, and something somewhere is going to give. Right? Okay. So increasing circulation without increasing blood pressure. So what we're going to talk about is the one chemical that really, I'd say, is the number one regulator for this whole ballgame.
Okay.
And it is
Nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide.
So loves himself some
I love me some nitric oxide. I take so much things and eat so many foods every day for nitric oxide. I've always, since I've learned about this, one of my mentors taught me this decades ago, I probably consume more nitric oxide producing foods and supplements than about anybody. But the thing is nitric oxide, scientists have won Nobel Prize from this, awards from this, from discovering it and talking about it. They call it the greatest medical breakthrough in decades.
And when was nitric oxide discovered, or when did it hit the mainstream? When did the people start talking about it?
It really was when I really first started getting into health and starting my journey,
90s?
Early 90s,
Okay.
right? So 92 was the year that it became the molecule of the year. So I was deep into just getting with this. The year before I got with the Phoenix Suns, and so I'm really deep in the research. And all of a sudden, they're like, you have to look at this new molecule. So molecule of the year is changing everything. So I was so passionate at that time. And so, studying 6-8 hours a day, that it was perfect timing for me. So that's probably why I'm so passionate about it, that it came out right then during that phase. But it was critical to understand, and it became the molecule of the year, because they're like, hey, we've just discovered that this thing called nitric oxide is phenomenal.
Really cool.
And so let me explain a little bit of the chemistry behind it. Try not to bore everyone.
Okay.
So think of your blood vessels, right? So you have, we talked about it last time a little bit, that you have the blood that goes to the heart, right? That's coming back to the heart, and that's your veins. And those are just like little pipes, okay? But then you have the blood vessels called the arteries leaving the heart with the oxygen and the nutrients. And those arteries actually have this lining in them, and it's called the endothelium. So it's a big, long word, but just think of, you have this pipe, but inside it, it has a separate little lining inside of it, okay?
Right.
And that is critical. It's like a muscle. And that endothelium is what, when it contracts and expands, allows the blood vessels to do what Hilary said, to increase circulation without increasing pressure. In other words, when the body pumps more blood in the endothelium, if it's stimulated properly, it allows the blood vessel to expand.
Just expanding, allowing it to go through without extra pressure.
Boom.
Love
just
it.
like that. And so what is the chemical that stimulates the endothelium to do its job, to allow your blood vessels to be flexible
Nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide is why it's so big on nitric oxide. And your body knows this is so important that it actually created 2 pathways to make nitric oxide. And our body is so unique and phenomenal, and it a lot of times works on, there's only one pathway to create something in the body many times. This is so important. The body has 2 pathways. In case one kind of messes up, that it can use more of the other, because if you don't have nitric oxide.
Well, I mean, it makes so much sense too, because it's so important that nutrients and oxygen and everything get delivered to all the different parts of your body.
Absolutely.
It would become a high priority.
High priority. And do it without the extra pressure,
Yes.
right? So nothing blows.
Right.
And so because it's such a high priority, the body really focuses on the creation of nitric oxide, again, to stimulate the endothelium inside the blood vessels to allow it to expand and contract.
Okay.
The problem is, as we age and we eat a processed food diet, then in the arteries, we start to build up plaque. We start to build up things. And if you
Other than processed foods, though, what other foods are really the culprit for built up plaque?
So fried fats. So anything where we've changed the molecular structure, it makes that structure many times sticky.
Yeah.
And so inside the blood vessels, because it's not a whole nutrient or whole molecule, it sticks to things. It's like reaching out. It's not complete, and it's reaching out, wants to grab onto them. So processed.
And it's not digested. It's not
digested all the way.
Eliminated, yeah.
And so the processed fats, sugars that are synthetic sugars, excess, we learned from, the high fructose corn syrups. Those are issues. And so what happens is we get this buildup in the blood vessel. Now think about it. We're building up in the blood vessel, possibly eventually causing a blockage, heart attack, right?
Right.
Or to the brain, a stroke. But think about what we're doing also. We're covering up that endothelium so that even if there is nitric oxide, it's not able to stimulate as well. So we want to have clean blood vessels. It's so critical, okay? And it's one of the reasons we talk a lot about enzymes and the importance of them. You take enzymes to digest food, but we recommend heavily that you take plant enzymes between meals, because it's going to go in and clean up the stuff that's in those blood vessels. So we're all there, right? So we have the blood vessels. We have nitric oxide that stimulates the endothelium, and your body makes that nitric oxide, okay? And so we want to not have a buildup in there. That's how come it's tougher as we age for your blood vessels to stay flexible. And, real quick on the flexibility thing. So when I went to school to get my phlebotomy license, right, and it was a group of us, and it was all bad because we're going to college, and we're getting this, and so we're practicing on everyone, and there's blood everywhere. It was nuts, but we're trying to figure this out. But when we went, we had to go to the hospital, and you had to do 1,000 sticks over a period of time. And so you go to the hospital and volunteer to do that. And when we went to the hospital, the instructors, you could tell they're having laughing and having little bets, because those of us that are a little bit more A-type, we're pretty aggressive, a little aggressive, let's go in there and get this done. We're like, okay, let's be the first ones to go to where all the old people are, because you think of old people and you think, oh, they got veins popping everywhere. This is going to be easy. Oh, yeah. So we went over to the older group, and the people that knew what they're doing went to the babies, actually, to the younger. And so I went, I'm like, I got this. I go to pop, the vein moved. Yeah. Well, why did the vein move? Right? The vein moved, and it was hard to poke it, even though I could see it. You had to grab onto that sucker and poke it. So you have to do it. Anchor, it's called. Okay. Bam. Yeah. And so, but why did it move is because it was hard. Because as you get older, you don't have as much nitric oxide, you have buildup, and so it's hard. Now builds up pressure, one of the main reasons we die. Okay. With me? So I learned hard way.
It's quite the story to get to that point.
Thanks. Appreciate it. So there's 2 pathways. They're not going to forget it.
I would like to point out that when our son was getting his phlebotomy license, I gave up my arm first, far before you gave up yours.
I knew better. That's why you look like a pincushion.
He did great.
All right. So there's 2 pathways. The first pathway, to create nitric oxide. So we're talking about what the body utilizes to make nitric oxide to stimulate the endothelium to keep your blood vessels flexible. Okay. Right? First one is called arginine, and it's the one that actually, the only one we knew about for quite a while, the arginine pathway. And the arginine pathway is a pathway. The body uses amino acids, mainly arginine. Arginine's like one of the 23 amino acids, like tryptophan, leucine, all that. The body uses arginine to be able to then create nitric oxide, and it does it through its pathway. It's called the urea pathway. It uses arginine, another amino acid called ornithine, and citrulline. Some of you eat watermelon. Watermelon has citrulline. It's so good for blood pressure. Is it helps get in the body. The body can make nitric oxide from arginine and a few of those, ornithine, citrulline, but it's called the arginine pathway. Okay. Yep. The second way,
food nitrates.
Food nitrates, and this was new to us until. And when did that happen? About 14 years ago. That's when we got the call when the Chinese swim team was getting crazy results. And in sports, in Olympics, if someone jumps from like 5th or 6th place up to 1st place really quick, like from the World Championships to Olympics, red flag, boo. And so there was a group of us that would check and see, what maybe it is. And from the nutrition side, we found out that the only difference was with this group is that they were consuming foods that had high amount of nitrates because they understood this. They were the first to discover it, and they're having higher performance.
Awesome.
And so food nitrates are nitrates, which is the chemical structures NO3 that are in foods that then when you eat them get converted to nitrites, NO2, then to nitric oxide, NO1, right? So NO1, NO2, NO3, nitrate, nitrite, nitric oxide. So it's real simple because it's just a nitrate in the food. It gets broken down real easy to nitric oxide. And the thing is that there's foods that have a lot of nitrates in them. And how do you talk about them?
Oh, you want to do that now or later?
Well, I was going to say, before we talk about the foods, let me explain. A lot of people say, well, I see a lot of things that say nitrates and stuff in them. But there are bad nitrates and good nitrates. The bad nitrates are chemically made nitrates that they'll use to preserve meat and put in things. And you want to stay away from them. Those cause cancer, especially in men, colon cancer, really, really bad. So just like with everything, there's bad fats and good fats, right? Well, there's good nitrates and bad nitrates. The good nitrates are food nitrates, and these are the foods you should eat to get the good nitrates. Ready.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we love beets. Beets are a great one, right?
And that's what the Chinese swim team was doing. They were drinking beet juice by the glass full before they would compete. Smart.
Arugula.
Arugula actually is higher in nitrates than beets, but beets gets all the hype, and rightfully so. We love beets, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Spinach? Because of what happens. Spinach, huge with that, absolutely. The watermelon.
You mentioned that.
Any deep, dark berries. We'll have some in them. Blueberries, raspberries, cherries, blackberries. We'll have them in them, but the highest amounts, as you mentioned, is beets, arugula, spinach, things like that. Okay, so what does that mean? That means every day you should be consuming some of those foods. Absolutely, positively, right? Go ahead.
This might be a silly question, but nitrates are there regardless of cooking of food. So you can eat your beets if, not a lot of people like a raw beet, but you could boil your beets or have pickled beets and you're still getting the same nitrate benefit.
Absolutely.
That's big for some people.
That is big. Yeah. That's a really good thing to point out. And I think that when it comes to the foods, we consume those foods a lot each day, both of us. We also consume those foods from a dried powder of those, but that's not heavily processed, just really nice freeze-dried powders. We'll use that a lot with the beets and that. And our supplements, we'll use that as a flow agent in the beet, so you get the nitric oxide benefit from the supplement no matter what ingredients in it. So you can do that. A lot of products out there will contain either arginine or beet powder, which can be great. You get that benefit. So those are the two things. The two pathways are the arginine pathway and the nitrate pathway. So when would you use one over the other? What we do and we recommend is look, this is so important. You should do something every day to boost nitric oxide. You need food nitrates and arginine, honestly, every single day. And the older you get, the more you need them. So you should consume, in our opinion, like the ultimate, food nitrates, morning, noon, afternoon. That should be your foods with nitrates in them. If you take supplements with it, the powders, that's what you should do.
Mm-hmm. It's really easy, excuse me, when you're trying to hit some of these foods. If you do a smoothie or a shake every day in the morning, I know a lot of people that do it in the morning. Yeah, go ahead. Throwing in a handful of spinach, throwing in blueberries. Boy, it's such an easy way to get that down. And it's a really easy way for your kids to get those benefits as well. So, you know, and then it's also easy to throw arugula in with your eggs in the morning. So it's really easy to get those foods. I know some people are thinking, how am I going to get, you know, that done in the morning? But morning and lunch is just so easy.
That's a great way to go about it. And it's the daily how-tos that's most important. I think that's what Hilary's so phenomenal at. And so that's the best thing to do during the day. And then we like recommending you take...
Can I also say something?
Arginine at night.
Yep. Arginine at night. It's also really easy to throw some beet juice in with other juices to make it so that you can hide that beet flavor. So
good point.
Yeah.
Okay. So why arginine at night? So nitrates, food nitrates during the day, arginine at night, because arginine has two abilities separate than the food nitrates. Okay. Arginine has the ability to be able to produce nitric oxide, like we talked about, and also, if taken at the right time, can help the body produce growth hormone.
Ooh, we love growth hormone.
Because it's anti-aging, helps you build muscle, keeps you anabolic, great stuff, helps the skin. So growth hormone's awesome stuff. And when you take arginine, there's only 2 times you can boost growth hormone with arginine. And that's right before you go to bed, because during REM sleep, if you have arginine, it boosts growth hormone, and then before anaerobic exercise, lifting weights. So you can take it in a pre-workout.
Got it covered then. We're good.
And then your body makes growth hormone if you fast, you know, more than 48 hours. So that's why that 72-hour fast once in a while, boom. We still got to do a podcast on fasting.
We will.
All right. So I hope you understand the importance of that. Now, to take into perspective, nitric oxide declines with age, and it declines big time, right?
Yeah, take us through it.
And so when we're 20s, 30s, we have high nitric oxide production in the body. I think a lot of it has to do with growth hormone, probably helping with that, because it pretty much goes the same as growth hormone in the body as our growth hormone declines. So your 30s and 40s is starting to come down big time. So you're not producing as much nitric oxide. That's when blood pressure starts to go up. And then 50 and on, it's pretty much not there unless you're doing something to boost.
I understand why you.
That's why I take a whole bunch of nitric oxide.
One of us has hit that 50 mark,
and so
more. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
It's not me.
I know my nitric oxide shows I'm at 20 though.
That's true.
And so nitric oxide is critical, and that's why you really should do it, especially the older you get, to be able to boost that. Because there was an argument for a while that blood pressure goes up with age, and that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Right, and that's false. We know that. Research studies have shown that the healthiest people in the world, their blood pressure is still optimal, and that they just live a lifestyle, right? Back to the lifestyle factors that make it so that it continues in the same range. And so let's talk about that number for 1 second. Okay. Blood pressure, according to government standards, should be 120 over 80. Mm-hmm. Right?
Government standards. What's the Dougie standard?
Well, it's not Dougie standard. It's a research standard. 120 over 80 is good. It is good.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal.
It's just that most people are so far from that. They're like, oh, let's get to 120 over 80. The healthiest people in the world, 110 over 70.
Oh, you beat me too.
Sorry. 110 over 70. And so that is the number you want to shoot for.
I think I'm pretty close to that.
Oh, you are. She's really.
Yeah, we hover right
She hits
there.
that
Don't
really
mess
close.
around with that blood pressure.
So 110 over 70, 120 over 80 is high for you, right? Because you maintain that at a high level. And we had a client that was in serious high blood pressure issues, serious. Like he came in and wanted to really improve his health and do different things. And we did all our tests that we do when we work with people one-on-one. And we're like, okay, I don't really care what you want to do. We're going to work on blood pressure. And he understood that. And within 8 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say less than 2 months for sure.
Less than 2 months. He went from like a 160 number, all the way down to 110 over 70. And I think, where were we? We might have been in another country or something.
I can't remember.
And we get these texts with these pictures of his blood pressure cuff. He was just so excited. He kept texting and texting.
So incredible.
But I would too.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Your highest risk of disease and dying young, and all of a sudden reversed it. So this is something that's very reversible with lifestyle, but remember, it takes a whole lifestyle. You need to have the right mindset, the nutrition, get rid of the processed foods, fried foods. Exercise is critical for it. That's why Hilary's a lot of times is such an extremely great blood pressure, because she combines the consistent exercise at a high level, right, with the diet, and then the supplements, right? The arginines, the things that boost the arginine pathway, the things for nitrates, those are really, really critical. So nitric oxide does decline at age, but it doesn't need to. Blood pressure increases with age, but it doesn't need to, and it shouldn't. 110/70.
Okay,
right?
So moving on.
Moving on.
Okay, so I think these are our signs of blood, like your blood pressure becoming an issue, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so here are some signs that we maybe need to start checking that blood pressure a little more often. Poor circulation, brain fog, achy joints, cold hands and feet.
That's a big one. A lot of people get cold hands and cold feet, and they're like, why is that? Because when your blood leaves your heart, it goes through the arteries, big giant arteries. And then when it gets to the fingers, the ears, to the toes, they go through little things called capillaries. And blood cells can only go through single file. So that's what it's easy to get cold in those areas. But you boost nitric oxide. Whoop.
Okay. Numbness.
And then there's some diseases that really come from, we talked about, but I think that, even things that we didn't mention, like kidney disease or damage, right? Raynaud's disease, nervous system issues, because the pressure is being put on the nerves.
Right.
And like diabetes, a lot of the reason that people die from diabetes is from pressure, right? The blood pressure, the pressure on the eyes, on the nerves and that. So I think that's overlooked. That's a really good point. All right. So we understand the two pathways, the nutrients that are in foods to boost nitrate levels. The studies on this are phenomenal, that when you give people nitric oxide, the blood pressure comes down, circulation increases, your cognitive function increases, your performance, muscle strength.
It's such a no-brainer with nitric oxide to me, because it's such an easy thing to add, and the benefits are almost immediate, and they are so wide-ranging. Cognitive function, I think, is such a huge one for most people right now. So many people suffer with brain fog.
Yeah, especially since the pandemic.
Yeah, especially since the pandemic.
And I think a lot of it is
I think
the
that's
damage
actually one of the number one things we hear from clients.
Yes.
Is I need help with brain fog.
Yep.
And we're talking about brilliant people that just, for some reason, since the pandemic, have had major issues.
Yeah, and so I think that that's really important to point out, that what's happening is we're damaging the cell lining, right? Whether it's from the virus or the vax or the blah, blah, whatever. There was stuff that happened, right?
Happened. Yes.
And you can DM me, I'll tell you exactly what. But anyways, stuff happened, and it damaged that cell lining, so we're not able to have the blood vessel flexibility. And so it's a really, really great point. And it's weird how things have changed. The reason that people come to us, say, can you help us and be the health coach and everything like that, when it used to be, okay, I've gained a little weight and time to get back. And now it's a brain fog, productivity, performance. Yeah,
what's really cool is that when the weight loss and that kind of thing becomes the byproduct of all the things that they're coming to us for, that is
that's better. Yeah, that really is. And so I think to understand, we'll kind of close with this understanding, and that is that when I first started, way back when, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, that we were always told and taught, if you remember back junior high, high school, we were always taught, hey, besides smoking, right, here are the major, problems today, right, with, high blood pressure, physical inactivity, your diet, things like that. But it was always smoking was number one, tobacco use.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I should say just tobacco use.
Tobacco, yeah.
But it was passed. So now the number one dietary risk, or the number one risk, is dietary. Right, so it's food.
Crazy.
So it goes dietary risk, tobacco, high blood pressure, high body mass index, all right, too much body fat, physical inactivity. All of those things that are the major causes of disease, right? Go through it again one more time. Dietary risk, tobacco, high blood pressure, high body mass index, and physical inactivity. All of them, except for smoking, relate to the lifestyle of eating right, exercising, right, taking the right nutrients, and just don't be stupid and smoke. That's just don't do it. Quit it. So,
I mean, for sure, quit it. But
no, research is okay. Work on it. We're with you. Okay. Call Hilary. So, basically, the reason I wanted to point that out is when we talked about that great question of what has been the change. The change is we're eating worse than we've ever eaten before. It's because what's being put in front of us is processed.
For sure.
And the ease of eating processed
The
food
ease.
is the problem, right?
Yeah.
And so you're right. We even have that problem. We go to get gas and you think, well, this is where we're going to pick up our little food, when we could go a block later and go to a Fry's or,
Yes.
somewhere and go into and maybe be a couple more minutes and get fruits and vegetables.
Or even when we, plenty of times planned it, got it already in the car and don't need to grab anything because we have our celery, our carrots, our grapes, so. Nitric
oxide foods. Okay. So I think that, let me see if there's another research or something I was going to mention in closing, but.
You actually did not do a commercial, so I don't know if you want to go commercial and talk about NO2s or.
Okay, commercial. And here's, again, I try to do the commercials for reals of saying, here's what we do, is we make. We're obviously passionate about this. We've been doing this, since the 90s. But try to make it so that you understand what it is that you should take, so that if you use someone else's formulas and that at least you know that we're trying to educate you that these things are good. Okay. So because this is so important to us, we obviously have formulated things to boost nitric oxide in the body. And one of there's three that I'll mention. One is chews. We make these chews called BFF, and everyone thinks it's like best friends forever. It means blood vessel flexibility formula. And obviously because there's a ton of nitrates in this formula, creatine nitrate, fruit and veggies, some things that we have some great human clinical studies on, and it boosts nitric oxide like crazy. Like within seconds.
Like crazy.
And so really, really good. Then we combine the creatine nitrate with arginine in a little pack called Ms Performance Pack. So they come in these little boxes and you can take those. And that's if you want the combo thing. Maybe like
we want the combo.
Like the combo.
Let's go.
And then you can just do powder. So we have something called fruit and veggie powder that has all of the, foods that have nitric oxide in it. Or you can go out and get things like beet powder.
And the great thing about fruit and veggie is that you're not just getting the benefits with nitric oxide, you're getting the benefits of whole foods from that powder. So that's really
big fan of that.
Also, you said you were going to mention earlier, when people go see a doctor for prescription for the bedroom, and you didn't mention that.
That was under mine. I like it. Okay, so.
You said it. So I was reminding you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate being reminded. Okay. So here's the deal. So we talked about no cut. We like it. So the deal is that you have all of these drugs out there, and if you think about blood pressure being a problem,
yes,
right, then you can understand this, that really sexual dysfunction is a huge problem, and because of the circulation, because what allows for one. Intimacy for it to even happen for guys, right? But also for satisfaction for women and all that is blood flow, right?
All about blood flow. Yeah.
And nitric oxide is a huge factor. So these companies said, hey, how can we increase blood flow to help guys, right? With ED, things like that, right. Women with just the desire and the satisfaction. And so they said, oh, wait a second. We made this discovery in the 90s of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the key because nitric oxide expands blood vessels, okay? And so they made Viagra, then they made Cialis. And if you look at those drugs, you can even Google it and see what were they based on. They're based on the understanding of what the body does to make nitric oxide. But they went and chemically put some things together, drug that forces the reaction.
Correct.
And when you force that reaction, so can they have the 4-hour rule and all that stuff. But I want you to understand, we kind of make jokes about it, but the thing is that it forces a reaction, and it does not do it through the arginine pathway or the nitrate pathway. It does it through drugs. And it's very caustic to the cell linings. In other words, we're not feeding the arteries and that to like be more flexible. You're forcing the nitric oxide, and it actually is causing damage. So over time, it actually builds up. You become more dependent on the drug. It doesn't work as well, and we cause huge problems.
When you could actually create the same effect, not the 4-hour thing, but the same effect by increasing your nitric oxide naturally.
Right. And so there's this, we don't list it this way, but there's a going joke because a lot of you know we work with thousands of doctors around the nation that work with their patients, and this is a big issue with the patients.
For sure.
And so there's this thing that is known amongst our doctors that they'll call in and they'll just say, we want the date night pack. And what they mean by that is they have patients with ED or the female side of it, and they need help. And so what we do is we send them the NOS performance pack. It's a little pack that has the arginine, the creatine nitrate in capsules.
Right.
Right. And we send them the chews.
Right.
And they take that 45 minutes to an hour before date night, and
It helps.
It
helps.
They're very, very happy.
So anyways, I just wanted to hit that because, when you think about blood flow, you think about...
Absolutely. And that's really critical. And it's something that is serious because when you look at problems in marriages and that, finance is number one. And in the top three is actual satisfaction within the marriage. And so if you can help with blood pressure and get blood pressure down, you're going to help blood flow, and you're going to help with the ED thing too. And then there's those things that you can do that help in the moment. But really the key is constant blood flow, so you don't have to worry about it so much.
Yeah.
Just in the moment thing. So great way to end it. I think it's really important. I mean, it is so important, and I know we play and we joke about it, and it's really cool, but it is a critical factor. So nitric oxide.
And I think people are sometimes afraid to talk about it. So I'm glad we hit it.
Absolutely. And so I like talking about it.
Me too.
Okay. So nitric oxide, the takeaway, nitric oxide is critical. High blood pressure, number one most attributable risk factor for disease. Buy a blood pressure cuff.
Okay,
for
sure.
You can do it. Go buy one. Buy one that has it's an arm cuff.
There you go.
It's better than the wrist, and you can do the electronic one, so you can just read it. You don't have to do, put the stethoscope there and do all that stuff.
And if you're not going to buy one, then set times for yourself to go and get your blood pressure
every 2 weeks.
There you go. Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
Put
Check your blood
calendar.
pressure every 2 weeks. Change your diet. Take in things to boost nitric oxide. Your blood pressure will improve. Promise you'll thank us forever. It's one of the greatest things you can do. We appreciate you guys. Let us know your thoughts and comments below. And as always, this is Miss Natural Olympia, Hilary.
And this is Doug the Formulator.
Keep chewing.
Thanks for coming.